It's time for The Story Behind the Person, featuring lively, in-depth conversation with compelling guests from our community. And here is our host, Jonathan Van Bilsen.
Hello and welcome to this episode. My guest today is Chris Creamer, the founder of sportslogos.net, one of the most comprehensive sports information sites on the internet. We'll learn all about Chris and his fantastic web presence and how he started it when he was very young. We'll be right back after these messages.
Top care with top stylists. Book your next hair appointment with Port Perry's award-winning hair salon, Rosario Greco Styles. The hair experience you deserve. Book today. Call 905-985-0099.
At Voss, your independent grocer, it's all about hometown living and shopping. Owned and operated by Terry and Christine Voss, their newly renovated Port Perry store carries many local items to support our town and its residents.
Welcome back. As I mentioned, my guest today is Chris Creamer. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jonathan, for having me. It's an honor to be on the fabulous Jonathan Van Bilsen show.
Thank you. So I noticed that you're a writer, you're a historian, you're a renowned expert on everything sports related.
Oh, stop.
So logos, uniforms, like anything to do with that, which is really intriguing. Plus, you're a marketing entrepreneur, which means you've put all of that information together into a package, right? And it's called sportslogos.net.
That's right.
Which is the name of your website and your company too, right?
Yep. It serves as two purposes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about the website?
Well, sportslogos.net is, well, basically as you described, it's a history of sports logos, design, uniforms, graphics involved in the sports world. We also have a message board where like-minded individuals can discuss what they like about logos, share their own concepts for what they feel a logo should look like. And there's also a big news presence on the website. So we cover any new logos coming out, any rumors, any leaks, as well as some historical features.
Okay. And this is your brainchild. Now, my understanding is that this is a huge site. Like, how many pages would you have on this site?
Oh, geez.
Like, are we talking 20 or 100? Or? I
would say maybe about 50,000 pages on the website.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. I'd hate to ask what your internet bill is. That's so this has been going on for a long time. You've been researching this. Now, you started this when you were quite young, correct? So
correct.
Why don't you walk me through how, because I know we talked off camera a little bit about this, but the timing, I found it interesting because it was really real internet days, right? Before everybody in the world had a website.
That's like we predate Google.
Okay,
so,
wow.
We've been around
I don't
a while.
even predate Google.
I believe it. The website was started in 1997. I grew up, my father was big into computers and sports, my grandfather as well. So I had started computer programming when I was quite young, 5-6 years old. I was in the basement of our townhouse in North York.
Wow.
Developing programs on our Commodore 64.
I was going to say, is that what it would have been, a Commodore 64?
Back when I first started doing programming.
That's when you're like star, print, star, something.
Basically,
really?
That's right. Yep. Back in the mid-'80s, I started that. And as the internet came out, naturally, my father and I were very interested in that. Okay. So we signed up for the internet 1995, 96 sometime, really early, on the dial-up modem.
Right.
And the first thing I had to do was figure out, how does a website work?
Okay.
So I was maybe 12 years old. I started building a couple of crummy websites, little collections of favorite photos and links.
Yeah. And
eventually, I had this interest in sports logos. I had always doodled them on paper in school instead of paying attention to the teacher. So my dad one day just said, "Hey, you always like the sports logo stuff. Why don't you just do a website dedicated to that?" And that's how it started.
Okay.
I was 14 years old, right at the end of ninth grade, and put together the site. Summer of 97 is when we launched it, and it just grew from there. I couldn't believe, within a few months, we were featured on CTV News. We were being featured in, back then, before search engines, there was internet directories, physical books that showed you websites, and we were in there. And it was quite a thrill for someone, 13, 14 years old, to see their name on television and in newspapers.
Well, not just that, the ability to actually be able to design a website at 13 or 14.
Right. And, naturally, I was, all the teachers, the tech teachers at my high school were very interested to know what I was doing. And it just grew from there. It got bigger and bigger and bigger.
But where did I have no idea how a website works. I mean, I know nowadays it's all, you just put in some stuff and it's sort of what you see is what you get. Mm-hmm. But back then it was all coding, right?
That's right, yes.
So where did you actually learn it? Because at 13 or 14, back in those days, you can't just YouTube something because there was no YouTube.
That's right. So what you could do is, and you can still do this now, is you can view the source of a website. And what it does is it shows you the code that they use to create the website. So what I would do is I would take, like, say, tsn.ca. I would download the source code. Mm-hmm. I would put it locally on my computer, and I would make little adjustments to it. Okay, if I change this, this happens. If I change this, that happens. And from there, I was able to put together my own site. And then you'd buy, you'd go to Chapters or Kohl's, I think it was back then.
Right.
And buy it's called HTML, was the programming language.
Okay.
And it would, give me more tips. And then eventually, after I was graduating from high school, I made it official and went to Durham College and got my web development degree.
Okay.
But by then, I had already been developing websites for
Right, so you were light years ahead of everybody else in your class.
Right, I figured I was just doing it to get a piece of paper so I can get a job. And
right,
yeah.
Right. So this would have taken up most of your life outside of school, correct?
That's right. I did not have much of a social life in high school, but I sacrificed fun times as a teenager for a little more fun times now.
Which is very, very admirable. I mean, I went through the same thing. I didn't have a social life either, but it wasn't because of the website or anything. Just that's
or
the way
success
it was.
Or anything that was. Yeah.
Don't push it. So how did you get recognized by CTV? Like they just or those organizations, they just zeroed in on you and the program that you were doing, the website you were doing?
Yeah, they just found it organically. I think word started to spread. Back then, there was these things called news groups, which...
Right, I remember that, yes, like Easy News and that.
That's right, yeah. That. So I would post little ads on there saying, hey, come check out this website. You guys might like it. The fact that I'm 13 years old, made maybe a bit of a novelty, I'm not sure, but from there, it just gained popularity from there. And, I got featured in the local papers down in Oshawa, which is where I was living at the time, and became a bit of a minor celebrity around the school, which was fun, yeah.
And what was on the website in the early days? Like just logos of the NHL teams, or did you start with any specific sports, or just...
The first sport I did was the CFL.
Okay.
I felt an obligation as a Canadian on the internet to represent my country.
Right.
And there wasn't a lot of CFL representation.
I was going to say it would be something like, it would be, if anything, it would be all NFL stuff, right? Because
that would be the popular.
Exactly.
Yeah, the NFL would have been most popular.
Yeah.
But I felt the duty as a Canadian. Someone needs to represent Canada on the internet. Right. And people watching this who grew up with the internet their whole lives might find it hard to believe that there was no Canadian representation on the internet. But back then it was all USA. So it started with CFL and then, branched out NHL, MLB, basically whatever leagues I was interested in.
Okay.
And it's a shell of its current self. It was very much just click a link, here's the logo.
Right.
Whereas nowadays it's click a link, here's the logo, here's the whole history of the logo. You can rate the logo, you can leave comments on it.
So you started with the logo itself. So if I wanted to look at the Toronto Argonauts logo, I would click on it and it would be there.
That's all you would see. That's right.
Okay.
No other information.
So basically, what are there, 12 CFL teams, whatever?
What are we up to now? Maybe 8 or 9?
Whatever it is. Yeah. So that you'd have 8 or 9 pages.
That's right.
With one link.
Right. But now there is every team has its own page. Every logo within a team has its own page.
Okay.
Every league, every sport. That's where I get that 50,000 number.
I was going to say, I mean, there's obviously a lot of potential for information. Do you take information that like, can I add to your site? If, for example, I see something and I happen to remember that the Toronto Maple Leafs had a different look back in 1927 or something, can I actually add to that, or do I contact you and then you research it? Is that how it works?
That would, and of course Jonathan would remember 1927 very clearly.
Very much so,
yes. Very much so. So you could either send me an email through a contact form on the website. Sorry, Jonathan.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I know what an email is.
Or you could send me a tweet to my Twitter account at sportslogosnet, and just send it to me. I'll see it, and when it fits into my schedule, I'll go and make the adjustment, because I want to be as accurate as possible. Right. That's my number one priority.
Okay, so let's just take it back a bit. Obviously, you must have a real love for this information, the logos and so forth. Is that something that you, as a very young child with your family, you watch the sports and so forth? You must be sports-minded, correct?
Oh, yeah, I'm a big sports fan. So again, this goes back to my dad. He's a huge sports fan.
What did he do for a living?
He was a computer programmer.
Of course.
right, for a company called Unisys in North York.
Okay.
And so he would, once I got maybe 5, 6 years old, he started taking me to sporting events, hockey games.
Right.
And I quickly realized that at the hockey games, the baseball games, I was more interested in the uniforms. I was more interested in the advertising,
Right.
the graphics on the scoreboards, everything that went on
The
around
back
the game.
what made it all work, sort of thing, right?
Yeah,
The face of it.
and yeah, that's right. All the packaging.
Right, right.
So, but that's not to say I wasn't interested in the game.
Of course.
But I found no one else really cared about this stuff.
Right.
But I was really interested in it. So from there, I'd tell my dad, I'd point out logos, uniforms. He noticed I was interested in this.
Right.
He would tell me little factoids that he had. He said, the Canucks used to have a hockey stick on their jerseys. The California Golden Seals used to wear white skates.
Okay.
And from there, I sort of built this knowledge base. And I remember there was one moment where I showed him an old Milwaukee Brewers logo. Now, for those who don't know, the Milwaukee Brewers logo is a baseball glove back then. And I was kind of making fun of it. I was like, look at this. It's just a baseball glove. What a silly logo.
Yeah.
And he said, that's an M and a B put together to make a baseball glove for Milwaukee Brewers. And it was like this light bulb moment, right? Oh my gosh, what else am I missing?
And everybody else too. Like, who will know that, right? I just learned the other day that the Boston Bruins logo is those colors because the grocery store or whatever was who founded the club, that was their colors.
That's exactly right.
And that, that stuff, you don't think of that, right?
That's
You
right.
just don't think of that.
Well, that's a good segue to my book right there.
Which we're going to talk about.
I might be skipping ahead there, but that's basically what I want to do. I wanted to tackle all of these origin stories, and because we just accept that the Maple Leafs are blue and white, right? Why are they blue and white?
And have they always been blue and white?
And exactly. So my website and my book, which we'll talk about later, really tackles that stuff and tries to finally bring out the true stories in these things.
Okay. So you went to a school for this. You became an official web designer, even though you were already doing it. And then you decided to get a job somewhere.
Yes.
With Torstar.
That's right.
Okay.
Someone checked my LinkedIn.
No, it was just, this information is just fed to me. We're good producers.
I worked for Metroland Media, which is a division of Torstar. Right. Specifically, I worked for DurhamRegion.com, which was based out of the Oshawa This Week building down in Oshawa.
With Bruce Froud?
With Bruce Froud, yep.
I remember Bruce.
Worked very closely with Bruce.
Because he switched from paper to the website.
That's right.
Right? That's right.
So I worked side by side with Bruce for a point there. So I started working on DurhamRegion.com, the website version of the newspapers. Okay. And from there we built a website called Flyerland.ca, which was very big for a while. And
for flyers, I take it?
For like grocery store flyers. Yeah. Not the Philadelphia Flyers.
No.
Though I may have pushed for that.
Right.
Which is now known as Save.ca. And I worked there for about 8 years.
Okay.
Before I decided to take that plunge with the support of my wife.
Right.
And decide to quit my job and focus on the website full time. I had a feeling that I could turn this into something even bigger, even greater. Okay. And after some humming and hawing, we decided let's do it. And 3 weeks later, she was pregnant. So
wow,
a good time to quit your full-time job just before you have your first kid. This was summer of 2012.
Okay, now it was quite a while ago. Actually, I thought it was less than that. That's quite interesting because I have a website, as everybody else does, but I find that I can't quit my day job because that website just doesn't pay anything. I'm going to hold you there. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're obviously going to talk about your book in detail. I also want to know more about the website and how you're able to actually make money, make a living, a relatively good living, I assume, and how you get your information and where it comes from. So stay with us. We'll be back right after these messages.
PP Print is excited to offer Port Perry wearables, featuring 2 great designs. Show your Scugog pride with apparel and headwear. We have you covered. PP Print, more than just print.
Welcome back. My guest today is Chris Creamer, the man who has one of the greatest websites known to mankind, sportslogos.net. Chris, welcome back. And I'm serious. Your website is amazing. We're going to flash it up on the screen and maybe even do a few screenshots if that's possible, just to get an idea of what it looks like. But the information, there's a wealth of information. We had a fellow on our show a few months ago. His name was Doug McGlatchy. And Doug is a collector of sports photographs. And he has every known sports, primarily hockey, but a photograph of every person. And I'm sure some of that information is on your website. He knew about your website and he used it for a lot of reference in that. So I imagine a lot of people would do that, right? If I want to know something about the Boston Bruins, whatever, I will go to that website, right?
Absolutely, yes. And it's kind of humbling sometimes, or maybe surprising is the right word. I got to go to the NHL headquarters. I got to go to MLB headquarters.
Right.
Hockey Hall of Fame, Baseball Hall of Fame on behind-the-scenes tours. And people coming up to me who work at these museums of sports history telling me they use my website for reference.
That's nice. It's nice to know.
It makes you feel weird, you know? Why are you using my site? I should be using yours.
But you were a research consultant for the NHL too.
I
for
was,
a while, right?
yeah.
And what does that entail?
So this was for the NHL Centennial season back in 2017. They wanted to ensure that their own logo history was as accurate as possible.
Okay.
So they reached out to me, which was very nice and a bit of a thrill. With that, I got behind-the-scenes access to the Hockey Hall of Fame's archives.
Wow.
All of their, and just going through game-worn sweaters worn by like Wayne Gretzky or Maurice Richard or Bobby Hull, and just holding these things like, why am I holding this, right? I'm not special enough to be holding this, is what you're thinking.
Right.
And I remember there was one moment when I had the white gloves on and working with the keepers of the cup, the guys you see handling the cup every year, and going through like these really like 100-year-old hockey sticks and stuff. And
it's amazing.
And there was this class trip coming through.
Right.
And one of the kids like peeked around the corner and just watched me. I was like, oh. And I was like, if I was that kid, I'd be like, man, I wish I was that guy. And it sort of brought me back to, okay, appreciate what you're doing right now.
Absolutely.
Because, one time you were that kid wishing you were that guy, and now you're that guy. So just take a moment, appreciate where you are.
It's very humbling.
Enjoy it.
It's very humbling.
It was quite incredible.
I had the pleasure of actually holding the real Stanley Cup once. A friend of mine assisted Gordie Howe in his 500th goal. Okay. And there's a picture at the Hockey Hall of Fame when you walk in and he's in it, and we got invited. He got invited down, I went with him. And they had the cup there, and we actually got to touch the real Stanley Cup, because they have a few versions, right, which are used. So it's quite. I brought it home actually. It's in the basement. So now, do you run into copyright issues with the stuff you put on the website? Like, if I have something that's mine, and you're gonna literally steal it and put it on your website and make reference to it, how do I feel about that? Does that ever happen?
It happened in the early days.
Okay.
When I was a nobody and just starting up, I would get a lot of people emailing me, what are you doing? Take this stuff down. Right. I would try to explain to them that this is primarily an education website, research website. We're trying to show everybody the graphic history of these things. And over time, I guess the bigger I got, generations passed, people who are now working for these teams grew up using my website as reference. Okay. Suddenly, they were emailing me saying, hey, make sure our logos are on your website.
Right.
So, I'll have Major League Baseball, or I'll have the NHL reach out to me and say, hey, you're missing that one, or you're missing that.
So make sure. Full 180.
Right. But still, some leagues, organizations, they're very careful. I've had a few run-ins with mostly international leagues where they don't quite understand what I'm doing.
Right.
And, I work with them. I try to reach a compromise. I say, what can we do to make you happy? And they'd say, we just don't like, how the resolution of the graphics. Okay, I'll still show it, but I'll make it smaller. Right. And they're usually happy at that point, and we can both go on being happy with each other.
And I find in most cases, as long as you don't interfere with the image, as far as changing the image and that. But I did see something a couple of months ago where you were messing around with, I believe it was the Ottawa Senators, where you had created a sort of a comedic look to their logo.
Yes.
And what was the reason behind that?
Well, Ryan Reynolds was considering purchasing the Ottawa Senators, and Ryan Reynolds is also known as the star of the Deadpool movie series.
Right, of course.
And the Ottawa Senators have a logo that shows the profile of a man, and I thought, well, why don't if I just replace that man with Deadpool?
Right.
And that seemed to do quite well on it. I don't want to say it went viral, but it kind of went viral. And just a couple of days ago, a fan sent me a photo where he made an Ottawa Senators jersey with the Deadpool logo I made on the front.
Wow.
I said, just as long as you don't sell it, everything's fine.
And Ryan Reynolds is okay with this too? Or he hasn't reached out to you yet?
He, he agreed in silence.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. But that sort of thing could be taken the wrong way, right? I mean, if you decided to change a maple leaf into a butterfly, for example, that wouldn't go over well. And you wouldn't do that, right?
Well, I don't want to be disrespectful,
exactly.
Right? So these teams, like I work with the people behind the scenes on these teams. I know these people personally.
Right.
The last thing I want to do is insult them.
Of course.
Make them look bad, make them into a joke. Sometimes it does make my job a little harder.
Yeah.
Because say I legitimately don't like a design or I legitimately don't like a uniform.
Right.
It makes it harder to critique it.
Yeah, you don't want to upset people.
Right. Well, because it's very possible that my friend made this design.
Right.
So
Or the question is like, who are you to
right.
It's your opinion, and you're entitled to that. But you don't have to share it with the world.
A lot of people want to hear my opinion, but I try to keep it just the facts.
Right. Thanks, Jack. So how many hits does your website get on approximately?
I think we're somewhere around 15 million a month.
Really?
Yeah.
So 15 million people come to your website every month?
Yes.
So what you do on that website is very, very influential. So you'd be an influencer then, without question.
I guess you could say that. Yeah, I've had a few influencer deals over the years.
Yeah. And you have a good following with over 100 videos on YouTube. Mm-hmm. You've got, 21,000 Facebook page followers, 15,000 Instagram, 66,000 people follow you on Twitter. I mean, we're almost neck and neck.
Yeah, we're getting close.
Yeah. So do you pull all this together? Like you send out, so let's say there's a new jersey that comes out, a new look, a new logo. You then send out a tweet on Twitter and you post it on Instagram and you post it on Facebook and then you bring it back to your website. Is that kind of?
That's how it works, right? Okay. So I focus on Twitter. My wife handles Instagram and Facebook for me.
Okay.
And that's where we get most of our instant traffic.
So she works full time with you as well now?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, so the big question is, how do you make money doing this?
Those annoying advertisements you see on websites.
Okay.
All right. That pays all the bills.
So if you have 15 million views, excuse me, in a month, you're going to get a lot of people wanting to advertise on your site. Correct?
You got it, and they're going to want to pay some money. And with 15 million eyeballs on there every month, then it adds up. Now I'm not rich. I'm not swimming. I'm not.
But you're young. You're young. You've got lots of time.
I'm in my 40s now, Jonathan. Yeah. I'm running out of time. I don't have a Scrooge McDuckian vault to jump into at the end of the day, but it's enough to live comfortably.
And it's growing, right? It's growing.
It's growing.
It continues to grow. So you must really just really, really work hard when there's a change or something that happens. And I mean, you want to be the first one out there with the information.
Absolutely.
Correct?
And so one of the benefits of this role I have is teams will come to me and say, hey, just a heads up, next week there's a new uniform coming out.
Right.
Here's pictures of it, on embargo, don't show anybody.
Right, of course.
We'll give you a chance to talk with one of our designers, one of our front office staff.
Okay.
And I will spend the next 3 or 4 days putting together the most comprehensive, detailed article I possibly could.
And then, boom, out
and
it
then
goes.
As soon as they say go, and I always listen, I'm very, like, if they say 9 o'clock, I don't post it at 8:59. I post it maybe at 9:01 just to be safe.
Right.
And it goes, and I tweet it out. We put it on Facebook, we put it on Instagram, and just like that, everyone's seeing it.
So tell me about this.
That is Fabric of the Game, the stories behind the NHL's names, logos, and uniforms. It is a book I wrote with my good friend and sports logo designer Todd Radom,
right,
who has designed Super Bowl logos, World Series logos, some pretty heavy-hitting logos there.
Really? How did you meet Todd?
I met Todd through my website.
Okay.
So a lot of his designs are on the site, and we just naturally formed a friendship. And over the years, I visited him at his place. He's come up here to visit me. We went to Scotland together once.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're good friends at this point.
Good.
And so that book started with my my work with the NHL. When I was at the Hall of Fame, I had access to all these things, and I thought, well, I'm finding out all these stories that nobody really, I'm reading a Cleveland Barons program from 1975. Yeah. This information's not digitized. It's not on the internet. This was printed in 75 and discarded. So we were able to go through all of those. Todd came with me to the museum one day, and we did all sorts of research, pulled those stories out, and put them all together in this book. The book explains the origin stories behind all of the...
I was going to ask you, I see
Yes.
that. Like, I mean, it's got like Buffalo Sabres going way back to the pre-70s and so forth. And some of the looks, some of the photographs are just amazing. Some bring back memories. I mean, Gordie Howe with the big crack gash around his nose, right?
We tried to pick some interesting photos in there.
And this is available on Amazon?
You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Chapters. You
Okay.
can get it at...
I'd highly recommend it. Anybody who's sports
Yeah.
interested, I would get this book because it's got so much information. And I'm not doing a plug for you, I'm just mentioning it. We will put your website on the screen as well, of course, so
appreciate
people can
that.
do it.
Thank you.
In the few minutes we have left, so what does the future hold for you? You're going to continue in this as things are right now?
I would like to expand. I always want to expand. I'd love to
Good.
do more video. Well, let's rephrase. I wouldn't love to do more video, but I have to do more
Right.
video because that's where the internet's
where the future
going.
is. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you need to grow with the, change
Absolutely.
with the times. And I'd like to develop a mobile-friendly version of the site. I know
Okay.
it seems crazy, but when I made the site in 1997, there were no cell phone websites.
Of course.
So I never created one, and I never learned how to do that.
Right.
So
and it's easy to do when you have 3 or 4 pages. When you have 50,000 pages,
it's a little trickier.
It's
That's
a little
right.
trickier, yeah.
So we're developing that right now. Hopefully that'll be done soon. And more video, more social, and
And I understand-
hopefully more books.
I understand also that you have a sort of a new career on the horizon, that you were just in a film that was shot locally
Yes.
as someone in the parade, and I believe that was starring Patrick Dempsey, correct?
Yes.
Who is known as Derek McDreamy. So we can call you Chris McCreamy. Is that how it works?
Is this a
guys.
lapel, or is this, how does this come off?
Anyways, Chris, unfortunately, our time has come to an end.
That's too bad.
Very quickly. It's been a lot of fun. I very much appreciate your information, sharing your information. We'll look for that website and probably start using it a lot more than I have been.
Thank you, Jonathan.
So thank you very much for participating. And thanks very much to everyone for watching. Please join us here every month for the story behind a person on Rogers TV.